I placed the cake on the dining table and smiled. "Morning, everyone. Look what I baked." Nobody looked. My son Marcus was already scrolling his phone, one hand drumming the table like I hadn't said a word. My daughter Temmie had her jacket halfway on, headed somewhere that wasn't here. And my husband Richard, the man I had spent 22 years building a life with, lifted his coffee cup, took one sip, and set it down hard. "Great, it's cold again, Laura." I stood there holding the cake. "Marcus, I need $300, my son said. To me, not to anyone, like it was a transaction, not a conversation. Temmie grabbed her bag off the chair. "Eggs and bread again? You have zero creativity, Mom. I'm eating out." She didn't even push the chair back in. And just like that, they were gone. The door didn't slam. It just clicked shut, quietly, like nothing had happened. Like I wasn't standing in the middle of my own kitchen holding a cake with 45 candles on it. I sat down. I didn't plan to. My legs just stopped working. I sat there and I looked at that cake, at the little yellow frosting flowers I had piped on at midnight because I wanted it to look nice. And I felt something I don't have a clean word for. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was something older than sadness. Something that had been building for years and had finally, quietly, arrived. They didn't remember. Not one of them. And the worst part, the part that I have never said out loud until now, is that I wasn't even surprised, because this wasn't the first year. It was the 7th. 7 years of baking my own birthday cake. 7 years of setting the table a little nicer than usual and hoping someone would notice. 7 years of dropping hints to Richard in the week before, mentioning the date casually, leaving the calendar open on the kitchen counter, and watching him walk past it every single morning without registering a thing. I had become invisible inside my own home. I leaned forward. I blew out the candles, all 45 of them, alone in a quiet kitchen that smelled like vanilla and felt like nothing, and I made a wish. I wished I had seen it sooner. I'm 99 years old now, and I want to tell you something that took me most of my life to understand. Most of what I thought mattered after 50 didn't. The frightening part isn't the wasted time. The frightening part is that it never felt like I was wasting anything. Every single choice I made felt responsible. I felt loved. It felt right. And that is exactly what made it so dangerous. There are 7 things I kept doing after 50 that slowly, quietly drained my time, my energy, and every drop of peace I had. They don't look dangerous. They look like loyalty. They look like love. They look like strength. Most people will praise you for them, but by the time you see what they really are, it is usually too late. I don't want it to be too late for you. So let me go back. Let me take you to where it all started, because you need to understand the full picture to understand why I ended up alone at that table with 45 candles and a wish nobody witnessed. I was 23 years old and I was doing well. I had built a clothing brand from nothing, just me, a small space I rented in the city, and an eye for what women wanted to wear. Before anyone was calling it influence, I was doing it, posting my outfits, showing my process, building an audience that actually trusted me. I was earning more than enough. I was free in the way that only people who have built something with their own hands truly understand. I was full of life, full of plans, full of the kind of confidence that comes not from arrogance, but from evidence. I had tried something, and it had worked, and I believed more was coming. Then I met Daniel. It was a coffee shop, a Tuesday. He sat down at the table next to mine. We got talking about nothing in particular, and somewhere between the first cup and the second, I fell, completely, helplessly, the way you only fall when you're young enough to believe that feeling is the same thing as knowing. I thought he was the man of my dreams. He wasn't. He was the beginning of the end of everything I had built. Not through cruelty, not at first, but through something much quieter, much harder to name, much harder to fight. We got married 6 months later. I was young. I was in love. I said yes like it was the easiest word in the world. And for a while, it was fine. It was good even. We had a home. We had plans. We had the kind of early marriage energy that makes you feel like you can handle anything together. But then the ideas started. Daniel always had an idea, a new business, a new opportunity, something that was going to change everything. And every single time he looked at me, at my brand, at my income, at what I had built, and he said, I just need a little support to get it off the ground. The first time, I believed him. The second time, I told myself it was an investment. By the third time, I had stopped asking questions. Every business failed, not dramatically, not in a way I could point to and say, that's where it went wrong. Each one just quietly ran out of steam and died. And Daniel would come home looking tired and a little smaller than before. And I would put my hand on his back and tell him we would figure it out. We always figured it out. With my money. Then one evening he sat across from me at that same dining table, the one where I would one day blow out candles alone. And he looked at me with those eyes I had fallen in love with, and he said, Laura, I need you to sign the store over to me, just temporarily, for the paperwork. It'll make the next investment easier. I remember the silence after he said it. I remember thinking, this feels wrong. I remember signing anyway. That was the moment. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment the door to everything I had built swung shut behind me. Not with a bang, just that same quiet click I would come to know so well. The store failed within a year. My brand, the one I had grown from nothing, the one that had given me freedom and confidence and proof that I was capable of something, was gone. His name was on the paperwork. There was nothing I could do. I was 31 years old, and I was starting over. I told myself it was fine. I told myself that I still had my family. I told myself that love was more important than a business and that things could be rebuilt. I worked harder. I found other ways to earn. I kept the household together with a smile on my face and exhaustion behind my eyes. And I told myself that this was what strong women did. They endure. They adapt. They keep going. And I did. For years, I kept going. But somewhere after 50, somewhere between the career I had rebuilt and the children I had raised and the marriage I had stayed in long, past the point where staying made any sense, I started feeling tired in a way that sleep could not fix. Not physically tired, soul tired, the kind of tired that settles into your bones not because you have done too much, but because you have done too much of the wrong things for too long. That's when the clarity started coming, not loudly, not in a single moment of revelation. It came the way the cold comes at the end of autumn, slowly, undeniably, until one morning you wake up and realize the warmth is gone, and you don't know exactly when it left. I started looking back, and what I saw made me sit down. The first thing I saw, the first thing I had to face, was how many years I had spent watching other people and measuring myself against them. After Daniel took the store, I built something new. I fought my way back. But I spent every single year of that rebuilding looking sideways, watching women I had started out with, watching who had more, who had grown faster, who had arrived at places I was still trying to reach. I was in a race I had never agreed to enter, against competitors who didn't even know we were running. I kept checking, am I ahead? Am I behind? Am I enough? And the answer, no matter what I achieved, was always not quite, because that's what comparison does. It moves the finish line. Every time you get close, it shifts again. You can spend your entire life running towards something that was never real, never fixed, never yours to begin with. I was measuring my life using someone else's ruler. And the cost, the real cost, wasn't just the anxiety or the restlessness or the feeling of never arriving. The cost was time, years of energy spent looking sideways instead of forward, years of chasing a version of success that belonged to someone else's story, not mine. Peace doesn't come when you win the comparison. Peace comes when you stop entering it. I learned that too late. The second thing I saw was harder to admit. When I lost the store, when Daniel's businesses collapsed, and I had to step back and rebuild from scratch, I lost more than income. I lost my sense of who I was. My identity had wrapped itself so tightly around what I did, around being the woman with the brand, the one who had built something, the one people came to for advice on starting a business, that when it was gone, I didn't know what was underneath. I remember sitting in our living room one afternoon, the children at school, Daniel out somewhere I didn't ask about anymore, and thinking, if someone asked me right now who I am, what would I say? I had no answer, not a real one. I was a wife, a mother, a woman who used to have something of her own. That emptiness is something nobody warns you about. They tell you that work isn't everything. They tell you to have balance, have hobbies, have perspective. But nobody tells you what happens when the thing that made you feel like yourself disappears. You realize you never built an identity that could survive without it.